Hey, I'm Jana, the little sister.
And I'm Jeff, her big brother. Welcome to Sibling Rivalry, a podcast about our favorite sport, baseball.
This week on Sibling Rivalry Baseball, I'm still basking in the glow of the Dodgers World Series championship.
I've moved on. I'm ready for the 2021 Angel season to start. But first, a look at the SRBB headlines.
Tony La Russa has been named the Chicago White Sox manager. He has history with the team. He was the manager from 1979 to 1986.
News in from Detroit, A.J. Hinch will take over as manager of the Tigers. He played 27 games for Detroit in 2003.
MLB reports the World Series averaged 9.7 million viewers, with Game 6 topping out at 12.6 million viewers. Overall viewership was down this year. Game 6 of the 2019 series, the Nationals versus the Astros, netted 16.5 million viewers.
The second highest paid NCAA football coach, LSU's Ed Orgeron, has voluntarily accepted a 5% pay cut. The school requested all contracted employees to take the cut due to a projected $80 million deficit as a result of COVID-19. You can find these and past week's headlines on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com. Remember to rate and subscribe wherever you listen, and tell a friend to listen to the Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast. Well, we made it through the 2020 season, a season we didn't think would happen, and we want to go back and wrap up the Dodgers and the Angel seasons, take a look around the league at what we can expect maybe over the hot stove season, and of course put a bow on our rookie season of Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast. But first, we want to chat about something we didn't get to last week. We're so excited about the Dodgers winning. We wanted to keep the focus on that they finally won after 32 years and all the elation and jubilation of that we left what happened with Justin Turner. We just left it there, but we need to address it, especially since so many people have come out and said that it taints the Dodgers championship.
Yeah, Justin Turner I believe it was in the 7th inning, was all of a sudden out of the game. Nobody knew why. Everybody is like, where is he? And it turns out he tested positive for COVID-19. Of all the people to test positive on the Dodgers is JT.
Yeah, here's the guy who at the beginning of the season was telling his teammates what they needed to do. He's the one that started the short season warning teammates about their pandemic responsibilities.
Yeah, I think it was the 7th inning. Edwin Rios came in and took over third base. Cody Bellinger said he had no idea what was going on. He saw Edwin at third and thought, okay, what the heck is happening here? And then, like I said, they found out that he had tested positive. One of the things that we don't have that's clear is it looks like they were tested every day, I think. And so his first test was inconclusive. I think his second test was inconclusive just from reports. But I've heard that that was positive, and then they did another test, and that ultimately was the positive test that took him off the field. And then he was taken to someplace in the stadium to isolate. Then, according to MLB, who has really thrown him under the bus and has opened up an investigation, he broke through MLB security out of the isolation room to come onto the field to celebrate with his team. And that's where the controversy lies.
Right. And the questions that have been asked over and over is, why did this happen? He's out on the field. As far as we know, it is a positive test. There's nothing to say that it was a false positive at this point. And he's out there with a mask, and then he's out there without a mask. And of course, everybody's talking about, well, he's right next to Dave Roberts, and Dave Roberts is
high risk because he's a cancer survivor.
Right. So he's high risk. So he's told to isolate and emphatically refuses to comply and returns to the field to celebrate with the team. Now, a couple of things I've seen is his teammates, and most recently Blake Trinan, have come out and said, this is all a joke. Walker Buehler even questioned the protocols that were in place. Joe Kelly, of course, had a lot to say about it.
Yeah.
Most of them said, we invited him out on the field with us. We weren't worried about it. We weren't worried about him. Whether they were or they weren't, they're covering that because he's their teammate. And Clayton Kershaw called him the rock of the postseason for every single year. So they all are like, we can't do this without him. And they were fine with him out there. I know that a lot of people are upset because we've all made sacrifices. We canceled weddings and other events. We're not going to funerals, all these different events. There's been no proms, no graduations. So why is it that this is okay? And I don't know that anybody is necessarily saying it's okay. It does expose some of the hypocrisy of the world because if you're a Dodgers fan, especially if you're a JT fan, you're probably finding ways to make it okay. And had it been a member of the Rays who had done the same thing, the world would be collapsing around them from the Dodgers standpoint. I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, it's hard because, like you said, if you're a JT fan, we're both JT fans. I don't want to make excuses for him other than the World Series. How often in a player's life are you going to be able to celebrate the World Series? But at the same time, I know the team wanted him out there. He was in the team photo. He had a mask on. For the team photo, he pulled it down, put the mask back up. He'd been around these guys prior to the official test being as positive that, the guys, but then he also puts the family that comes out on the field at risk. And I did notice that a lot of people, we did see some players hug him. A lot of them had masks on. There was also some social distancing going on there too. I personally think that Justin Turner didn't think that he was positive for the virus. That's what I think.
I don't think so either. I think that he took it in the moment. I have some questions about how all this works anyway. He gets tested. It's inconclusive. He gets tested again. It's positive, but they don't know that it's positive until the 7th inning of this game. So the whole time that he's been out there, if he's positive, he's already been in contact with all of the members of his team, plus whoever might have been around third base, the umpire. And we know from watching during the season, even with all of the outbreaks that happened with the Cardinals and the Marlins, the guys on the field didn't seem to be at risk. Of course, they blame that the roof was closed. I don't think that had anything to do with it either.
No.
So how come it took them this long? Shouldn't they have known before the game? Shouldn't, with these protocols or whatever they had in place, if it's inconclusive, shouldn't they have set him out then, pending a definitive test?
Right. Yeah. That's a lot of the question there is, why was he in the lineup? Even if the test had been right. Even if there was a question. Look at Juan Soto, who missed a good portion of the season and he had tested positive, but then he had negative tests consecutively, but he still wasn't allowed to play until, he had so, and some of that too was local protocol in DC. But yeah, why was he in the lineup? And also, how does he get COVID in the bubble? They weren't allowed to order food from outside of the hotel. So everything was in the hotel. Now, I know that Joe Kelly said they were in a nice hotel in Los Colinas and there was a golf course there and people were playing on the golf course. He said there were media that were in the hotel, but they weren't in the bubble. They were allowed to kind of go about their business. Could it have been somebody that worked in the hotel? There's a lot of questions on how does he contract this virus when it's supposed to be a safe environment?
I know they mentioned too that the room service people were just supposed to leave the food at the door, and sometimes they would actually bring it in. Until they can trace it to somebody else, we don't have any idea how he got it. I think it was a false positive, but the narrative right now is that Justin Turner's a selfish dude. We know that's not true, but in this case, he put his want and need to celebrate with his team above everybody's health.
Right.
And I guess on the one side of it, he's positive. We don't know any differently. Of course, it's going to suck if he ends up being a false positive and he could have been out there and he didn't go. But now what if 10 players all get it? Because he did have a mask on, but then there are times where you can see throughout the video where he doesn't have his mask on, other than the picture, hugging people without a mask, and then he does have a mask. He's holding the trophy with his wife at one point, and they both have masks on. Then he's next to Dave Roberts. He doesn't have a mask on. Does it matter whether he has a mask on or not? He shouldn't have been there in the first place. They're saying, number one, that first question, how did he get in the bubble? What happened when he was told and pulled from the game? They shouldn't have isolated him in a medical office or someplace there at the stadium. They should have removed him from the stadium completely. Said, for protocols, you have to go do this. Took him back to his room at the hotel or whatever. But instead, he goes out there, celebrates. I believe he doesn't think he has it. I don't think any of his teammates thinks he has it. They're all wondering how it could happen in the bubble. A guy named Carlos Meneres, who writes for the Detroit Free Press, grew up a Dodger fan, big JT fan, said that Justin Turner's actions ruined the World Series title for him as a lifelong Dodger fan. What difference does it make what he did? You're still world champions. How did that ruin? You're a little too sensitive, I think, if that bugged you.
Yeah. I think it was almost, I don't want to use the word fitting because we don't want anyone to get the, coronavirus, but it was kind of at the end that someone at the end of the World Series would test positive for after all of the protocols and all of the things that happened. But MLB, they have started an investigation into what happened. Obviously, I think the reason that they were so quick to start this investigation is because they also share blame in the whole situation. And instead of saying, well, we had these protocols set out and we didn't follow this, they're going to say, well, Justin Turner, we isolated him and he broke through the security and now we're going to investigate. And now people are like, well, wait a minute. Is he going to get suspended? Is he going to get fined? And there have been people in the Twitterverse that are like, he should be suspended for a year or for life. And the Dodgers should pay $20 million. And that $20 million should go to healthcare. And I mean, all of these scenarios. And right now we still don't know what happened. I know that JT and his wife are back in Los Angeles, but we still don't know if he even had the virus.
And shouldn't we know by now
whether
there was another test was a negative or if he really does have it? On the one side of it, yes, he should have maintained. And even if he went out, he shouldn't have been that close to everybody.
Right.
I see why he was out there. I understand. And none of us know. It's real easy to sit where we are and make judgments on what happened, but we never know what we're going to do until something actually happens to us.
Right. Exactly.
And I think it's apples and oranges. People who are like, this is a tainted title now. What's tainted about it? They didn't cheat.
Exactly. There's no cheating.
There was no cheating. And that's the thing, Helene Elliott, who writes for the LA Times, Bill Plaschke, both wrote, this does cast a shadow over things because people are only going to look at that. They're not going to look at what really happened and how the team won and what they overcame and how they did it in a season that was full of those types of protocols. And we don't know exactly. The bubble stuff seemed to work, but of course, right at the end, one player gets it who's been in the same bubble for how long?
3 weeks.
How did they get it?
Yeah.
A month. But you figure they've been in the bubble for a month because the bubble started before they even left LA before the wild card series.
Oh,
that
that's
last week of the
right.
season.
Yeah, because they stayed
So how
in the
did he
hotel
never
there.
get it? And then on the last game, he gets it, but he doesn't officially have it until the 7th inning. I just
Yeah.
think the whole thing was bungled from their part. Whether he should have been in or out, I think that it doesn't matter whether he was positive or not for the test. At that point in time, it was believed he was positive. He probably shouldn't have done what he did, but I don't think it's the end all be all. He didn't come out and infect 700 people.
Right. Yeah. He one of the things I saw over the course of this is a guy named Richard Key, who is with the Baseball Studies Institute. He had a picture of Bob Welch. And Bob Welch was a pitcher for the Dodgers for 9 of his 17-year career. Bob Welch was very open about his struggles with alcohol. And after the Dodgers won the World Series in 1981, the team, of course, was in the locker room spraying champagne, drinking, and Key took a picture of Bob Welch out away from the locker room, weeping, and he was just pushing along, trying to clean up some of the mess, but he was away from the locker room because he knew that for him, even though he wanted to celebrate with his teammates, for him, it was not the place he needed to be because of his struggles.
His alcoholism.
Yeah. And that really struck me.
I saw that too, and I thought about it at first. I thought, yeah, this guy's selfless, but then I realized he did get to go out on the field and celebrate. And this wasn't something that him being in the hallway not partaking was a personal thing, and it had no effect on his teammates that they could be sick or not sick. He didn't want to be exposed to the alcohol and maybe have a relapse. I know they were trying to say, hey, he was a selfless guy, but he really wasn't.
Yeah.
He did it for his own personal reasons. JT did too, but the effects are different. And JT wasn't going to get to go out and celebrate on the field with them. So, well, we'll continue to look after that and check our social media. We'll post things as they come up or retweet them or whatever. Another thing that happened during that final game of the World Series that we didn't talk about too much, and we just a brief thing, Blake Snell being taken out of the game. A lot of people are talking about here's how analytics seems to work against you. One thing that I saw was normally you would see something like that, you wouldn't think anything of it, but because they were playing the Dodgers and Andrew Friedman was once the GM of the Rays and of the Dodgers, and a lot of the things that the Rays still do today are things that he set up, it was very obvious that it seemed like a front office move that Dodger fans have been calling out for years. And when they went and pulled Blake Snell, whether or not Blake Snell should have stayed in or not, we don't know. We don't know what would have happened the next time around. I know that Kevin Cash said I couldn't let him see Mookie and Corey and couldn't let him see him again. And that was their game plan. And I've seen a couple of stories where one said the problem wasn't they took Blake Snell out. The problem was who they replaced him with. Had they brought in like Diego Castillo, maybe the same things don't happen. Nick Anderson was not the guy. I kind of think that they should have left him in there. But because Kevin Cash was so locked into the plan, he did say, guess I regret it because it didn't work out. Personally, I thought Blake had done the job and then some. And Blake Snell, of course, being diplomatic, said, yeah, I get it. I see it both sides by the time we're done. He was just like, the hardest thing for me is I was rolling. I was in a groove. I felt like I had them guessing. It was tough for me. It's going to be tough for me to accept that. I really don't know to look at it. However you look at it, we lost. To me, when I went back through all this stuff, the one thing that got me thinking was Mookie Betts said, and in a conversation after the game, even Dave Roberts said something, they were all kind of relieved that he was out because he did have him guessing. Kevin Cash has got to be going, man, he's not going to admit to it, but he messed up because the other team's even admitting. We were having a hard time trying to figure out how to hit him. If he'd still been in there, we don't know what would have happened. Kevin Cash is thinking, wow, we could have gone to game 7. Of course, that opens up to go back to the JT thing. If there'd been a game 7, what would it have been? Another week while they tested everybody?
Yeah. How well
that would have really messed everything up.
Yeah, definitely. Well, when you think about Blake Snell's performance in game 6, you have Mookie, Corey, and JT were 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts against Snell in game 6. And in the series, Betts and Seager were 1 for 9 with 6 strikeouts against Snell. And when you combine that with the fact that LA had hit just 215 when facing a starting pitcher a third time through the order in the regular season, you think, why would you take Blake Snell out when he, as he said, he was really in a groove? And he said, I believe in myself. I believe in my stuff. But I think that one thing that wasn't mentioned, it wasn't taking Blake Snell out. It was replacing him. But that wasn't the only factor that contributed to the loss. The offense for the Rays scored 1 run and struck out 16 times in the game. Now, I've also heard Mookie Betts said that the plan was that they really wanted to knock him out in the 6th inning. And so when Kevin Cash came out to get him after 5 1/3 innings, he gave Dave Roberts a little smile like, all right, here we go. And then they went.
So, yeah, there's been a lot of questioning of that. Noah Syndergaard tweeted, so who gets to pull the manager?
Yeah, that's always a good question. There's some times that you do want to, you'd rather have a manager get out of the game.
Jerry Blevins, relief pitcher from the Mets and the A's, he tweeted, you manage a baseball game with your eyes, heart, and gut as well as your brain, except in these cases where you stick with the plan.
Yeah. Well, and you think about the GM for the Rays was an intern under Andrew Friedman. So everything that we see as Dodger fans that drives us crazy, I'm sure drives the Rays fans.
Because it looked exactly like something we'd seen before, only from the Dodgers.
When you look at just this Game 6 of the World Series, but also look at Game 6 of the Championship Series, Blake Snell also pitched that game. Same thing pretty much happened in that situation. Now, he wasn't as sharp in the start for the Championship Series, but he had a lead of 1-0. He had only thrown 82 pitches and they took him out and they had 2 on. There were no outs and there was a ground ball single. Same thing. One of the Astros, I think it was Gurriel, hit a single. Same thing happened. Austin Barnes hit a single and he got yanked. And the same thing happened in the ALCS. So they pulled Snell, they brought in Diego Castillo, and the Astros went on to win that game and force a Game 7. So it's very interesting how similar Game 6 in the ALCS and Game 6 in the World Series were for Blake Snell.
Frank Thomas said, another analytical meltdown. Total disaster for Tampa. Blake Snell was your only chance of winning a tight game tonight. And I agree that that's something they needed to look at. And I think I even told you, who do you want to lose with? You want to lose with your ace out there and him giving something up, or you pull him out and then the next guy gives up all the stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And it's early enough. They weren't doing anything at that point to win the game. It's early enough that had he given up a run or had he given up another hit, they could have taken him out then and then worked through it. Regardless, those are the things we're going to see. We're going to continue to see more of the analytics and more questioning of that. I think that Kevin Cash looked at it from a baseball sense and said, I think he still got it and been able to override it. But we don't know if that's the GM there may say, no, once we come down with this is what it is. You will stick with it, period. As we've talked about, we're wrapping up the season. We're wrapping up our first season here, and we wanted to look at the rules that were part of the 2020 season. We know 2020 was a weird season, short season. Even though it was only 60 games plus the playoffs, it felt like it could have been 300 games plus the playoffs. So 450 games with the playoffs. There was just a lot of baseball. There were a lot of things that happened even in the short season. It was a much better season than I think we thought it would be. With that, though, as we're going to return to 2021, and as far as we know, everything will go back to standard practice. Obviously, if there's still shutdowns going on and isolations and the same protocols that we're looking at now due to continuing issues with the pandemic, some of these rules may actually be negotiated back in again, but most of them were only for this season, specially approved. And we want to talk about those. What are some of these that we might be interested in them negotiating in the CBA that's up at the end of next season? So let's start with the designated hitter.
I wasn't sure about the designated hitter. I always liked the distinction between the American League and the National League, but it didn't bother me that much. Okay, got the DH. I know there are pitchers that like to hit in the NL, but I wouldn't be opposed to having the universal DH in baseball.
Yeah, I like that strategy and management that went with that. I have to hit my pitcher, but being able to look at, especially like the Dodgers, look at their team and go 1 through 9, you're in trouble. Instead of going 1 through 8, you're in trouble. And then maybe we'll get lucky and Clayton Kershaw hit a home run, but mostly you figure you're guaranteed 1 out per 9. So you really only have to worry about 1 through 8. I like that any team could build it. I also think that when we get later in the show, we'll talk about some of the pending free agents for the upcoming season, that if all 30 teams have the DH, now instead of these older players who maybe aren't playing the field as well but can still hit pretty well, the Nelson Cruzes of the world, have more opportunities throughout the game.
Yeah.
They could go to any team because any team could be looking for a designated hitter. So we agree that that one can stay. Let's look at, well, before we get to innings, let's look at 7-inning doubleheaders.
7-inning doubleheaders just doesn't feel right. It doesn't seem right. It seems little league. I mean, unless your team is playing and they're up and then you're like, oh yeah, it's only 7 innings.
Well, and I think I said that when the Angels played a doubleheader and they were up and it was like the 6th and you're still going, oh, we got to hold this for another 3. No, we only have to hold it for a half inning for that moment. But the game at 7 innings, it's like, wait, we never got into this game.
Yeah, right. You just haven't settled in. Yeah, I am not a fan of the 7-inning doubleheaders. I think I understand, I guess, why they did it, just with the nature of everything, trying to get those games in. But I think it needs to go back to 9 innings.
I think so too. You play all these games at 9 innings. There shouldn't be shortened. If you're going to shorten doubleheader, just shorten it to 7 innings anyway.
Yeah.
All games will only be 7 innings.
Right.
What did you feel about roster size? This year we changed it up. It was supposed to go to 26. Actually, it was supposed to go back to 26 during the season, but with all the COVID issues, they changed that and left it at 28. We started at 30. What do you think? Should they just go back to the 26, or should there be 28 or 30 on the roster all year long?
Yeah, the one advantage I see to the expanded roster is definitely for pitching for your bullpen. We saw that with the Dodgers, almost all of the teams, the Dodgers, the Braves, obviously Tampa Bay. I mean, it helps out. It doesn't mean that it's going to work out in your favor just because you have extra pitchers or extra players. But look at Matt Beatty, who was on the World Series roster and never played. I'm kind of a toss-up on that one. I can see, it would be good, but at the same time, there's also, when you don't have as many players available, there's that strategy that goes into it. I'm kind of on the fence. I'm not saying, definitely no or definitely yes. That one is, I guess it's all on how the team manages the roster and how well they do it.
I think they should just stay at the 26 and be done with it. All right. And then the 3-batter rule.
The 3-batter rule, obviously, I know a lot of questions, especially for somebody like Adam Kolarek, who would come in for the 1 batter and then he was out. I don't know that it made a difference as far as the game, and because we still seem to see the same amount of pitchers coming through, at least it felt like to me. I don't know that it added anything to the game. It really didn't take anything away, other than, again, you really have to think, because we did see this happen where they would change pitchers, and as soon as that pitcher was announced, then the other team was, okay, you're not hitting, you're going to pinch hit because, it was lefty, or righty, or lefty, or, whatever that situation was. So that was interesting to see. And then also, you're invested once you don't get just one guy out and go back to the dugout. So it did make it a somewhat interesting. So that one I think could stay, because it didn't, to me though, it didn't really make a difference as far as the number of pitchers cycling through a game.
The main purpose of that rule was to shorten the length of the game.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. I don't care if they keep it, but I say dump it. Why continue to do that if it's not going to have the effect? Why did you put it in place?
Yeah,
it's not doing that. Just stop.
Yeah, if that was the main purpose, was to shorten the game, then yeah, just get rid of it because it didn't do its job.
All right. One of the big ones that we heard people say no to and then all of a sudden say yes to, Zennings and the Ghost Runner on second.
Yeah, I like extra inning games. I mean, I like the Zennings without the runner because, again, this was supposed to make it so games didn't go into 15 innings or 18 innings, which we talked about earlier about how there's not that many games that go beyond, you're not going to have a 15, 16 inning game. You have them, but you don't have them all the time. And we saw, look at the Reds and the Braves in the wild card. They went 13 innings and they had a runner every inning on second base, and it didn't make a difference.
Position, yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't make a difference. So for me, I'm good without. I like the extra innings without the Ghost Runner.
I think it opens up the possibility for more Zennings.
Yeah.
All it takes is a single, you've scored a run. Now the next team comes up and they do the same thing. So you go back and forth with that. There were quite a few games when we looked at it early in the season. There were a lot of them where that runner really didn't make any difference in the outcome. And I don't know how the season ended up with Zennings games, but how many times did that runner make a difference? Kicked that one to the curb. I don't think it made any difference. And all of these guys who are so-called baseball purists who said, "Oh, I've come around to it. It's a good thing." That's because they're getting paid off by Manfred and the MLB.
That's
right.
That's
why. Two more things. Expanded playoffs.
I know this year was an anomaly, but you look at the playoffs and you think, who were the teams that they just didn't deserve to be there? The Asterisks, the Brewers. I mean, it was, why were they there? And to me, when you're playing for a championship, you want the best teams, because when you expand the playoffs, then as long as you either finish first, second, or third, and then you get in the playoffs. So there's no incentive to be number one in your division. I mean, I guess there could be if they put some incentives there other than say we were number one. To me, it loses the whole championship feel for baseball. I like how it was.
Well, even Manfred said it was too many.
Yeah, it was a lot of teams.
Now, it was fun from the standpoint of watching it all happen. I think that they could expand them a little bit more, like do the 3-game wild card series. Not just a 1-game kind of play-in thing.
Yeah.
You could do that and then move on, but I don't think they need to go like they were.
Well, and the other thing is,
did.
Yeah, and the other thing would be, in that if they were to do that situation, is could you give a bye to those teams that were, like the Dodgers? The Dodgers really need to play the Brewers? No, but they did. And couldn't they have had a bye,
Right.
The first place teams or something?
What was the point of having a winning record when you're playing a team with a losing record?
Yeah, I mean, you want to work for something, or you're working towards something in the season. I will say that I read recently that Manfred likes the idea of a neutral location for the playoffs.
That's what I was just going to bring up. He was talking about World Series neutral site. What do you think of that?
I don't like that. I mean, we see that in the NFL for the Super Bowl, but that's different because the Super Bowl is one game and it's where is it going to be? Each team gets to host, or, they host the Super Bowl, and it's a whole big part, but it's one game. Baseball, the fans of those teams deserve to be in the stadium. And, a lot of people would have loved to have gone to Texas. And there were a lot of Dodger fans that, were able to make the trip, because it makes a difference too. When you're in, say, for instance, Fenway Park, and you're playing in the World Series, the all of those Red Sox fans. I mean, it's so the atmosphere is different. And they did a good job with the fans in Arlington, but it's such a different feel when you're on your home field. So I don't like that.
Right. The Dodgers would have celebrated their victory at home this season.
Can you imagine? I mean, you probably would have felt the shaking.
Oh, yeah. It would have been crazy. I agree with you. I think that the neutral site was good for this season. I think that there were good parts to it. The part that I liked the most was that they just played every day, with the exception of the World Series. They actually took the travel days off.
Yeah.
But I liked that part of it. Otherwise, I don't agree with him.
It's time for Dodger baseball.
Let's put a wrap on the Dodgers season. Of course, they're the one team that gets to say we won the last game of the season, which is good because that means for this offseason, all the Dodger fans who are normally grousing about bad moves by Dave Roberts with the pitching staff or Clayton Kershaw choking or the bats being dead, none of that talk this offseason. This offseason, it's all about how much money you spend at the team store to get your championship gear.
Yeah, too much is
That's
the
probably
answer.
the case. Well, it's funny because I saw on the local news, people were there buying hats and T-shirts and such. And one guy bought a hat, and I'd seen it online for like $43. At the team store, it was $58.
Yeah.
So if you want it right that minute, otherwise you have to wait till mid-November or whatever. I mean, I can wait.
Yeah.
I don't need it right away.
It works out well too for the Dodgers because the Dodger Stadium is a voting site. So you vote and then go buy your merchandise.
Right. That was it. Vote and buy a hat.
Yep.
Or a T-shirt or both. So the Dodgers had obviously a great season, best record in baseball, and pretty much best team. Like we said, 1 through 9 in the batting order. They were a tough team to compete against. Now we look at the offseason, the wrap on the team. Everybody at some point in time of their main 26, let's say, contributed. Even guys that we were mad at. Kenley Jansen did do some good things.
He did. Yeah.
But so with the wrap of the season, we know that they had the highest run differential. They scored 349 runs, which is most in the league. They hit the most home runs, 118. As far as league averages go, they were above league average in just about everything. For the most part, they led the league in almost every offensive category.
Yeah, I mean, who knew that just the addition, I mean, the Dodgers have a good lineup without this guy. But who knew that putting Mookie Betts the top of the lineup would make such a huge difference for the Dodgers? And not just winning, but the attitude of the team. You just saw that. He, like I said, he's the conduit for that team, and happy that he's going to be around for another 11 seasons.
Right. MVP nominee in Mookie Betts. I would say if you were going to name an MVP just for the team, who would you name?
Mookie Betts.
And why?
Because not only his play on the field, offensively, defensively, but the attitude change that he helped facilitate in that roster. They were more driven than I've seen them. I think about when they played the Nationals, and you were at some of those games, and it just seemed like they were sometimes it's like, okay, we're going to get there. And other times it felt like they were just going through the motions. And now you've got this superstar. I mean, really, he's made this team better. It's his work ethic, and this is Mookie Betts. He's MVP and, in the American League, and he was World Series MVP in 2018, and you want to emulate him. And so he, for me, would be the team MVP. I mean, I can think of other guys, but really he just made a huge impact on the Dodgers and the attitude of the team And he has helped, other guys. We talked about Austin Barnes. Austin Barnes can't say enough good things about him and how he helped him with his offense. So yeah, Mookie for me.
I agree. And if you look at it only from a number sense, Corey Seager would be your MVP just from stats.
Right.
But Mookie, with the leadership qualities, those things made a big difference, and you could see the difference. And the guys are saying he came in and he didn't just act like it's my first year here and I'm a superstar. He came in and embedded himself in the team, and they were all better because of it. So now we know that Mookie's there for another 11 seasons. We know that we've got Corey for a couple of more. This season, there's 7 free agents. 7 guys are going to go. Now, some of them we can look back and say, well, it'd be all right if he goes. He wasn't that big of a part of the team, or he was only here for a short time, like Blake Trinan. He was only here this season. But then we have Justin Turner, who is now a free agent. Right now, he's playing for Team COVID. We don't know what's going to happen with that. Jock Peterson, Kike Hernandez. These are 3 guys who have been big parts of this recent run, World Series, National League Championships. So those are guys you got to consider, especially Kike, because Kike's versatility. And then after that, it's relievers. Blake Trinan, Alex Wood, Pedro Baez, and Jake McGee. Now, Jake McGee only showed up this year as well, pitched well, but is that enough to keep him on the team? And like Alex Wood, what he did at the end was great, but is that enough to keep him on the team?
Yeah.
No qualifying offers were advanced. It looks like Jocelyn and Blake Trinan were the only ones that were eligible for that, and they were not offered qualifying offers. And if you're not sure what a qualifying offer is, it's a 1-year contract. This year it's for about $19 million, around that area. And that number is a average of all the major league salaries from top to bottom. And they come up to 18.9, I guess was what it was for the season. They're not going to offer either one of those guys that much money. Because they didn't offer them a qualifying offer, they became free agents, doesn't mean they can't re-sign with the Dodgers. It's just the Dodgers were not going to spend that much money on him. And for Jocelyn, that would have been like doubling his pay. If you remember, back at the beginning part of the season, after the whole trade debacle and his arbitration, there was a lot of issues right there. And a lot of it was about how much money he was going to make, which is about $9.7 million was what he ended up making for the season.
Yeah, when you look at free agents for the Dodgers, I think, to me, Justin Turner is going to be back, especially if the DH does become universal. He could fill that role. He's 35. He still plays well at third base, still can fit in there. But I think I see him platooning with Edwin Rios there. But I see him getting signed. Kike Hernandez, I think they would keep Kike because of the versatility, but also because there's a question mark at second base. Gavin Lux has been a bust. I don't know if a full spring training would make a difference for him and if he was playing every day, but there's something not right there with him. And so having Kike there just in that spot is good. Blake Trinan, I would keep Blake Trinan. I mean, he was a workhorse out of the bullpen. Jake McGee, no. I mean, he did okay, but no. Jake McGee is Pedro Baez. I can see him probably coming back. Alex Wood, maybe. And Jocelyn is a toss-up for me, because I'm sure that there are a lot of teams out there who could utilize him, and he would play probably every day on another team. They also had Jimmy Nelson, who we didn't see pitch at all because he had back surgery. The Dodgers declined. He had a $2 million option. They declined that option. So he's now a free agent.
So they clear out because they want to make room on their 40-man roster. They clear these out, figure out what they're going to do. There's other things that'll happen. We'll talk a little bit more about like tendered contracts, non-tendered, where they go through and say, hey, these are guys for arbitration guys. where they could say, we're going to non-tender you, which means they're able to be free agents at that point. Even though everybody's a free agent right after the World Series, the day after, and for 5 days, their current team has a chance to negotiate with them independent of everybody. We don't really see a lot of movement until after all the pieces have fallen off, who's actually going to stay, and then you know exactly what your needs are. If you extended offers or you tendered to a bunch of people and they all take what you gave them, then you may only need a couple of pitchers, or you may only need one position player here or there, depending on what it is. The Dodgers have about $20 million to play with. What do you see them going after?
So, to be honest, I don't think you really need to go after much with looking at other free agents. I mean, we don't need a catcher. We don't need pitching. You look at the pitching staff, and I thought, well, maybe pitching. There's some enticing players out there. But really, I think the Dodgers, if they can solidify a starting rotation, we have Kershaw, we have Buehler. Where does Dustin May fit in? Where does Tony Gonsolin fit in? And how about Julio Urias? We saw him in the World Series, lights out. Is he a starting pitcher, or is he the new closer? Where does Kenley Jansen fit in? Kenley Jansen, I don't think he's a closer anymore. So for the Dodgers, it's really about, I think, solidifying starting pitching rotation, because they don't really need starting pitching. Because you think about, we had David Price coming back. Everything is good. So you've got that. Solidifying the bullpen, how are the pieces? But as far as like 1 through 9, we're good. So I think for the Dodgers, getting these free agents, like Kike Hernandez or JT, Blake Trinan signed, I think that's important. But going and signing someone or even doing trades, I mean, I'm sure there might be some trades, but I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, 2 things to throw at you here based off what you just said. If Trevor Bauer comes and says, I want to be a Dodger, do you have an issue with that?
I don't have an issue with that. I would love to see him strutting off the mound in Dodger blue. Yeah, see, that's a tough one because, I mean, if the Dodgers had Trevor Bauer, I am not going to complain, but...
Well, think about this last season. There was issues. If the Dodgers had lost the World Series or had they lost the NLCS to the Braves, a lot of questions would have come up about their pitching because all of a sudden their pitching didn't look as solid.
Yeah.
You really only had Kershaw and Buehler, and then it was, let's spin the wheel to see, is it Gonsolin? Is it Urias? Are we going to try Alex Wood? Because you didn't have David Price, because you let Stripling go. 2 of your former pitchers went on to be Cy Young Award candidates in the same season after they leave us.
Right.
And we still won a World Series. That's either going to inflate the brain or not. So my other question is, I knew you'd want Bauer if he wanted to come there. But my other question is trades. We know JT's at a spot at third base. He's probably good for at least another season. His age, all it's going to take is a injury.
Yeah.
Maybe put him to a spot that he's not able to play as well at third base. So do you look at trades perhaps to solidify that? Do you look and see if next season Nolan Arenado opts out of his contract and you go after him? Do you see if you can trade for Francisco Lindor, because this is the last year of his contract there? You might be able to get him fairly cheaply and slide Corey to third and Lindor in at short. Do you consider things like that?
Yeah, I think you consider all of that. Obviously they just won the World Series, but really they don't, where they're setting right now, other than, like I said, solidifying pitching rotation. But I guess you could still platoon, Corey Seager at third with Edwin Rios. I really like Edwin Rios. So I think, he definitely deserves playing time and has shown that. And I wouldn't say no to, Lindor. He would be great in LA. One person, and I know it's my bias coming through, but I just think Gavin Lux is a bust. I think they could trade him somewhere. for something. I don't know what.
Well, as long as people think that he's got value, that's all that matters.
Well, and he's still ranked as one of the top prospects. I mean, I know he's played, but he still hasn't played enough. And when he has played, it hasn't been great. But yeah, he still has value, I think, within the league to be a trade piece. Yeah, no, I think you look at all of those options, and really it just comes down to money. And that's one of the things that's going to be interesting this off season, with the owners already saying, oh, revenue is down because they didn't have ticket sales and they didn't have, all of those other things. Concessions. Like that, yeah. So are we going to see big contracts and things like that? And probably not.
Well, some teams like the Dodgers can do it
right
easier than other teams can. And really at this point, adding Trevor Bauer, adding a Francisco Lindor or somebody high up like that is just adding to the already rich roster that they have. And I'm not talking just in money, just in talent alone. Right. And they have guys that are coming up that can maybe make a difference in the season to come. So Mookie Betts was your MVP. Let's wrap up the Dodgers season with, who did you think their pitcher of the year was?
Oh, well, that's a good one. Kershaw looked really good this season. And that's a tough one because Walker started off not great. Then he had blisters, but he really shined in the postseason. You know what? I'm going to go with, and you'll probably guess who it is because again, a lot of it has to go. I think Tony Gonsolin for me, just because Clayton Kershaw, we expect to be on the top of his game. And he had a great season this year and obviously great postseason. But for me, Tony Gonsolin, I think would, and Julio Urias. It's hard. And Julio.
I looked at innings pitched.
Yeah.
And I took the top 5 and I looked at their stats, and a lot of them were very close. Some were better than others in that. And it came down to 2 guys for me, and it came down to FIP, fielding independent pitching. As we talked about before, that is a stat that is more about what the pitcher can control versus his ERA and other things. And when it came down to it, Clayton Kershaw had a 3.31 FIP, and Tony Gonsolin had a 2.29 FIP. And they were about 10 innings pitched apart, but some of that is because Clayton started earlier than Gonsolin, had a couple extra starts. So I went with Tony Gonsolin as well, based on the numbers, and he seemed to be solid throughout.
Yeah, I really look forward to seeing what he will do next season if he can continue, working on those pitches, perfecting those things. Because I think he's a really, I just really like him. And I've seen him be able to, when he's in a situation where they allow him to get out of a jam, in the Rangers game where bases were loaded, and you thought, well, Dave Roberts is going to take him out and go to the bullpen, but he didn't. He allowed him to get out of that inning, and he did. And I think things like that just help build confidence. So, and you went with numbers, and I just went off the top of my head thinking of his performance throughout the season. Although I got to say, on his sleeve, it looks like he eat spaghetti or pasta or something before the game, because it looks like he's wiped spaghetti sauce on his sleeve. And that bothers me.
Maybe he puts it on there thinking people will think it's blood.
Maybe.
And what did he do right before? It's an intimidation factor.
It could be. Yeah. If that's part of his thing, okay, but it still bugs me. I'm thinking, come on. Get a clean jersey.
You need to stop paying. So somebody asked Clayton Kershaw, what was it? He was on Jimmy Kimmel, and Jimmy Kimmel's daughter asked why his hat was so dirty. of
Yeah.
Clayton Kershaw. So does that bother you as well?
That one doesn't bother me as much because I know Clayton Kershaw likes one hat. And I don't know if that, he didn't go into detail if that's a superstitious thing, if he has one hat for the season and they just slap on the World Series patch. Sometimes you look at it, it's pretty bad. I mean, it's sweaty and dirty. You can see the salt stains, the sweat stains.
Well, see, when my hat gets that way, then I can say this is the Clayton Kershaw model.
Oh, right. Perfect.
So the Dodgers will bask in the glow of their World Series championship and will head back to it. April 1st is opening day for the 2021 season, and they're going to be in Colorado to start off the season instead of at home, which they have been the last few years. The Angels have a much harder climb. They have a lot of open spaces. They have a lot of questions they need to answer. Obviously, we know their biggest need is pitching, but before they can ever get to that, they got to find a general manager. And they seem to have about 900 candidates. And they've only interviewed like 14 or 15 of them so far, but they hope to be done by Thanksgiving. Luckily for them, not a lot is going on between now and then, and it'll probably be December before we really see. Hopefully the guys are there, which Bill Stoneman is really the only one that's left because Tony La Russa, who was a special assistant, is gone. The assistant GMs, when their contracts were up, they both left last week. So Bill Stoneman was a GM for the team for a long time, ended up building into the 2002 World Champions. So hopefully he can keep things afloat, talk to some people, float some things out there and see if we can get, because I'd like to see Trevor Bauer here versus the Dodgers, but either way is fine, but I'd like to see him here. The Angels, like I said, so many questions. We saw at the end of the season, they started to come together, getting what Joe Madden had been talking to him about, what most of us were like, what are you doing, Joe?
Yeah.
Started to see. They really only had two free agents in Andrelton Simmons and Julio Teheran. They did not offer qualifying offers either because that would have meant paying that nearly $19 million a year for both of them. And Andrelton Simmons is still in that proving it stage. Because of the injuries he's had 2 years in a row, he's rolled an ankle that's kept him out. This year, not as bad as last year. So they're not willing to pay that much money for him. It does feel like he's already decided to go somewhere else as much as we want him to come back. Now, obviously, there's some other choices, and we'll get into that in a minute. But as far as the team goes, in most categories, they were above the league average. They scored almost 5 runs per game. League average was 4.5. 501 hits, 97 doubles, 85 home runs. So they had some good numbers. They had some bright spots on the team. Obviously, Dylan Bundy comes to mind, a guy who nobody knew what would happen just based off of what he did in Baltimore. Mike Trout, not in the top 3 of the MVP voting this year, which is weird because normally he always is. And Mike Trout was named the MVP of the Angels. They announced that right towards, I think, in the last game of the season that the team had done that. Now, I disagreed with that. Dylan Bundy was the pitcher of the year based off of the team's voting. Who did you pick for those two?
For MVP for the Angels, I'd go with David Fletcher. I think David Fletcher was everywhere. He was hitting. He would just play wherever Joe Madden was going to put him. He was going to play, and he wasn't just going to play there. He was going to play. He's going to be, the top of his game. I think he made a real difference for the Angels. I mean, Mike Trout, I guess, is always the obvious choice, and he didn't have bad numbers this year.
He led the Angels in most categories.
Yeah, but to me, there was something off about him because, again, I think you expect Mike Trout to have those numbers, and he wasn't necessarily anything spectacular this year. And as far as pitching, I would say Dylan Bundy deserves that because he really was the ace of the staff and really was a bright spot for the Angels where they struggle in pitching. So I could totally see why. For me, I don't think any baseball fan is going to say, I don't want Trevor Bauer on the mound for my team, but who could use him more? The Angels. The Angels could use him more.
No, absolutely. There's a lot of pitchers out there, he being at the top of the list. Now the question is Trevor Bauer received a qualifying offer? Another pitcher that was connected to the Angels, Marcus Stroman, qualifying offer. So you're going to have to give up draft picks in order to sign these guys. I think, at least for Trevor Bauer, I'm not sure about Marcus Stroman, but for Trevor Bauer, I think that it's worth it.
Oh, yeah.
Because you need a solid pitcher who's proven. You can always bring up a lot of other guys, and there's lower level pitchers all across, and they still will have Griffin Canning, Andrew Heaney, maybe Shohei Ohtani, who knows?
Yeah, that's a question mark there.
It is.
I don't know.
I wonder because I was looking at the roster, and there's a lot of people that they could non-tender, that they probably will non-tender. They non-tendered Cam Bedrosian, who has been one of the more solid relievers for them, but they can get somebody else that does kind of the same thing. Cam Bedrosian leaving isn't that big of a deal, and he could actually still be re-signed. He's a minor league free agent. When we're talking about pitching, though, one guy that was brought up as a possible non-tender candidate is Keenan Middleton. This plays into Shohei Ohtani as well. Keenan didn't have a great 2020, but he just come off of Tommy John surgery. Shohei came off of Tommy John surgery. Both of them had issues. And the more that I've read about and listened to guys who've had Tommy John surgery, most of them it takes, even though they're back the next season or season and a half later, it's usually not until the following season after that. So it's almost a 2-year process, really, till they're back to where they want to be. So I don't know that we can completely write Shohei off yet, nor can we non-tender Middleton because he didn't pitch that well. It's because he was really good before. I think you still give him a chance because he's shown he can do something. There's other guys you can get rid of. There's guys who did pitch well. Mike Myers will probably be back.
Yeah.
Because he ended up pitching really well. Hansel Robles, kick him to the curb. I don't think that we need Hansel Robles. He had his one season, and he just proved that he really couldn't do anything more than that. As far as the Angels go with pitching, there are a lot of options out there. We talked about Trevor Bauer. Taijuan Walker was up with the Mariners. You were pretty high on him, and he did a good job with the Blue Jays as well.
Yeah, he'd be a good addition. You have Robbie Ray. Now, Robbie Ray was traded to the Blue Jays, but he's still struggling, but maybe being in Southern California could help. I don't know. Maybe.
He's not high on my list.
No.
Kevin Gossman from the Giants, maybe, but he was given a qualifying offer as well.
Corey Kluber.
Paxton. I don't know about Corey Kluber. I know he's available, but we just don't know what he's going to do. He's been injured, and it just seems like just when he was getting back, first game back, he injured himself again.
Right.
In the 2020 season, ended up not playing at all.
How about Cole Hamels?
No, too old.
Okay.
Marcus Stroman could be considered. James Paxton from the Yankees. Masahiro Tanaka.
Oh, yeah.
Iffies, but maybe. These are guys to consider.
Well, I was going to say probably not John Lester, but really cool thing that he bought everybody beer in Chicago. I don't drink beer, but he would have brought me a Dr. Pepper.
I didn't see that in what he offered. And it was only a certain kind of beer, too. It was like Miller Lite, I think, was what he was buying.
I don't know.
So he must have got a deal with Miller Brewing Company to do that. So... yeah, I'm looking at that at some of the different, and there's a lot of pitchers available this season in the free agents. And like we talked about, who knows money-wise? Right now, I feel like obviously we need to get a GM in place, but I think that if there's a GM that can go head-to-head with Artie Moreno and get him to spend a little money smartly, we could actually get a couple of decent pitchers. We could get a Trevor Bauer and then somebody that might be, a tier below Trevor Bauer and have two more, add them in with Dylan Bundy, Andrew Heaney, and Griffin Canning. we look a lot better on the mound. Obviously, we do need to bolster our pitching staff. Liam Hendrickson from the A's. I thought about him for the Dodgers too.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't mind him being in the bullpen for the Dodgers.
Keone Keela from the Pirates is another reliever that might be a good guy to go look.
Trevor Rosenthal.
Trevor Rosenthal, yeah. And I wondered about him because he was so excited about being in San Diego.
Right.
He's a free agent. He could just come up the road. We have just as good Mexican food up here. Not Tex-Mex, Trevor. Authentic Mexican food.
Brad Hand also.
Right. Yeah, you forget. And you wonder what was Cleveland thinking there.
Yeah, I don't know. I see he's one that I would let, as an addition to a bullpen for the Dodgers, but definitely for the Angels, somebody that you really want to look at.
And then from there, other than the pitching staff, for the most part, it seems like we've got things more or less figured out. And some of it's a waiting game. We dropped $30 million off of the payroll after this 2021 season with Albert Pujols' contract being finished. Right now, unless something falls apart for him, Jared Walsh looks like the presumptive first baseman playing back and forth with Albert, depending on what happens with Shohei and the DH situation.
Right. Now, I heard with shortstop, Andrelton Simmons, the free agent, based on that parting message that he gave, doesn't look like he will be back. We don't know. But I've heard the Didi Gregorius' name being mentioned as an Angel.
Right.
And I like Didi.
I like Didi as well. There's been a lot of talk about him going back to the Yankees as well, but I think that's media driven.
Yeah.
That they wanted to do, so they're pushing that narrative because they're not buying in on Gleyber Torres. But yeah, I thought about that. I looked at other positions as a whole. We don't need an outfielder. We have guys, Taylor Ward, Joe Adell. Who knows what's going to happen with him? He's in my Gavin Lux column.
Yeah.
We know we've got Trout. We know we have Justin Upton. Not to say that, hey, if Michael Brantley wants to come and play outfield, I would accept him.
Yeah, he's like one of the only asterisks that I would say, okay.
I would have to consider, as long as he's willing to move to, say, right field, George Springer.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So
I don't know that we would get him, but George Springer, and we'll talk more about all that in a minute, but I think he wants out of Houston in a bad way.
Yeah, he was offered a qualifying offer, but yeah.
Right. I don't think he wants to be there. And I think that there's some teams out there that are probably more interested in him than, say, the Angels. The Angels are focused on pitching.
Yeah.
But I looked at catching. Max Stassi, we know, had another hip surgery. We don't know when he'll be back. Anthony Bimboom, I think, solidified his place as a backup.
Yeah. Really
but
good.
I'm wondering if we need to consider another, maybe a little higher, because obviously JT Realmuto would be great, but I think JT's either going to stay in Philadelphia or maybe going to the Mets. But I would love to have him. The other guys that I looked at, a lot of the catchers that are free agents this season are on the north side of 35.
Well, you look at Yadier Molina. I don't see him leaving St. Louis. He is a fixture in the Cardinals organization. So he's there, but and plus, like you said, he's on the tail end.
I don't see him coming there. It's not like he's got his tie to the Angels is that both his brothers were there, and one of his brothers has been the first base coach for most of the year and is normally the bullpen coach in Jose. So I looked at it, another guy, and I looked at age. I looked at where they were. James McCann is one of the top prospects. I think most of the list have him at number 2. But looking at it, I found that I would consider Wilson Ramos.
Okay.
Who had his club option was declined, so he's out there. And overall, when I looked at him versus JT versus what we have, I feel like he's a little better option and will cost a little less than JT would.
You could get Jason Castro back.
I thought about that too. I really did consider him. There's a few, but I thought, well, let's look at the guys. These guys are Realmuto and Wilson Ramos are good defensive catchers. They're both great hitters.
Yeah.
And we want the full contribution. So I thought about those guys. At second base, here's where we're kind of looking. Shortstop, second base. If we fill in one, we don't have to fill in the other because we have David Fletcher. But I'm looking at it, I thought, well, of the free agents out there, we could go back and grab Tommy La Stella again.
Yeah.
Colton Wong from the Cardinals was club option was declined, so he's available. And then I thought about Kike. Could come and play second base for the Angels. Now, I don't see that he's going to leave the Dodgers unless the Dodgers just insult him. He's not going to leave like Jocelyn. Jocelyn has more motivation to leave and go somewhere else. Kike, even though he's a utility guy, pretty much plays every day.
Right, he does.
Part of the team. But if there was somebody I wanted to consider to be an everyday second baseman, he's somebody that I would look at, and he's a free agent. Now, if we didn't go to second base, Fletcher can be the shortstop or he could be the second baseman every day.
Yeah.
Didi Gregorius, or I say Andrelton Simmons. Those are my two top picks. Even though Marcus Semien is available from the A's, I think he's going to be looking for money that he doesn't deserve because he had one season where he was third in balloting for the AL MVP. I don't think he's ready.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question because I didn't realize that he was a free agent. Is Jurickson Profar? It's from San Diego. I know he's an outfielder. You don't really need him on the Angels, but would he be somebody that could add?
But he played second base for most of the time he was with the Rangers.
Right. That's true. So maybe out of the Padres, obviously number one on the hate list or hit list. I don't know. Trent Grisham. But Profar, he's pretty good. I mean, he's good, hitter and fielder.
He's too uneven for me.
Yeah.
He's decent defensively, but hitting wise, he's too streaky.
Yeah.
And the problem is his streaks tend to be to the negative side.
Mm. Yeah.
And I did think about him, but there's other guys out there who I think have bigger upsides. And if I'm going to go out there and I'm going to spend any money, I think, somebody else I considered for catcher, Mike Zunino, whose club option was declined as well. And he impressed me throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, he's good defensively. I don't know if it's just being on the Rays and they have high strikeout rate, but he would be somebody that would be good there. I know you probably could say too old. Charlie Morton also is on that list.
His age is there, but he's a pitcher. He's looked strong. It's the same with like John Lester. These are guys that maybe you can get to sign. You could sign them for a 1 year, maybe even a 2 year, just to be nice, and then see what happens. Charlie Morton, though, has talked openly about retirement many times. We don't know what he's going to do with this, and maybe it'll be what kind of a deal can I get?
Well, I think the deal and also where it will be, because he is from Florida. He said he would like to pitch at least another year for Tampa Bay because, it's in Florida and he has a home there. And so would he consider coming to the other coast, or would he pitch maybe closer to home, say, like the Braves or, somebody like that, where it's still on the same, in the Eastern time zone?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't see him coming out here, but if those teams won't look at him, and I don't think the Braves are considering, they might, depending on what, they seem to be pursuing Adam Wainwright, who is another guy I can't see leaving St. Louis.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that too. And I guess he's from Georgia. So that's why they're hoping maybe that will be seal the deal.
Yeah, I think that I'm going back to my hometown, or I'm going back to my home state thing is a little overplayed.
Yeah.
That was what everybody thought. Oh, why wouldn't Garrett Cole go to the Angels? That's right there. He used to go to Angel games as a kid. He lives in Orange County. Well, maybe that's why he doesn't want to go there.
Yeah.
And I'll give it to him. If I was a baseball player and the Yankees came after me, I'd have to consider it because they're the Yankees.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. So the Angels have $34 million space. So they have some room to work One thing that I've been thinking about with this season is we know that the money parts are going to be weird. Plus, you're getting to a point where you don't know how things are going to change going into the next CBA. It's probably worth it for a lot of players to sign 1-year deals and then figure it out from there. With the COVID issues, and like we talked about, Ed Ogeron taking a pay cut because of COVID deficits, the owners are all saying that some of these players, if they really want to go to a team, can take a lower salary for the first year and then build it up after that once you have a full normal year. They could work it out to slide it and say, well, this year just do this, next year do this, and then in 2023 we should be back up and running at full strength. Then you can make $30 million that year. Backload the contract so that you're getting more money, or we'll just pay you every year for 30 years or something like that.
Yeah, I think, and I think this year, especially because revenue and, it's just a different year, that a lot of these guys that are looking for these big contracts, is it going to be smarter to do like what you just said? Because I don't think we're going to see these big contracts. And in fact, it might be one of those hot stoves where maybe the burners are going to be off for a while.
I agree with that. There's going to be, and like anything, like past years, it's going to take a couple of the big guys to go. Trevor Bauer is going to have to get signed somewhere before others get signed.
Yeah.
In that same echelon there, that same tier. Some lower ones may get picked up, but what he gets signed for will set the rest of the market. And like I said, the other thing is how badly do the Angels want to make it to the playoffs next year? And what's it going to take? Can they sign, let's say, Taijuan Walker and Kevin Gossman or Masahiro Tanaka, and that be enough to put them over the top?
Yeah.
Conceivably it could be, but will it be? And would you rather have Trevor Bauer and Marcus Stroman, or Trevor Bauer and Taijuan Walker, James Paxton, any of these guys? Would you want to bring in Liam Hendrickson to be your closer and build that kind of a team, more of a let's win now type of an idea? And maybe some of these other players, do you make a run at Real Muto? Say, we have $34 million. If you guys will come play and work this in, and we'll give you 4-year deals, we'll make sure that on the back end you get covered.
Yeah, I was thinking of another second baseman that we didn't mention that should get big dollars, and that's DJ LeMahieu. Now, he was offered a qualifying offer. I'm pretty sure he'll stay with the Yankees, but
I didn't bring him up now because I didn't figure the Angels would go after him.
Probably not.
Well, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
You
can have a dream, a wish list, like when we used to get the JCPenney catalog or the Sears catalog, the Christmas wish book, and you would, I don't know, get your paper and you would write down. Yep.
Page 91.
Page 91,
4.
DJ LeMahieu. Page 100, Trevor Bauer. Yeah.
Right.
You can do all of those things.
Well, I looked at it too as like in need.
Yeah.
We don't need DJ LeMahieu.
That's true.
Can we use him? Would we like him? Sure. If he came to us and said, well, I want to play in Anaheim and I'll play for this much money, I honestly think that he's going to stay in the East.
Yeah.
Maybe not a Yankee, but he's going to stay in the East.
Yeah.
The Angels have that much open. They absolutely need pitching. We know that. We needed both starting and relief pitching. The questions are Ohtani, Keenan Middleton, especially Ohtani, though. What does he become? And does he become a guy as he gets into arbitration that you would consider trading or letting go at some point? Because I don't know that he's going to turn out to be what we all thought. I love him. He's so fun to watch. He's always smiling. He's respectful of the game. You like it, but I don't know.
We really want him to have that breakout season where he's great in the batter's box and great on the mound, and we just haven't seen that yet.
And he proves to be what he said. Now, I don't have as many issues with him because we didn't overpay for him.
Right.
He was on a rookie contract. Now he's coming up towards the bottom end of arbitration. Yeah. He's still working up. We can get rid of him before he's going to cost any real money. And maybe he never really will, because he's definitely one that we've got to watch out for. I do have to say I was a little sad to see that back to Salt Lake City became a minor league free agent. Feel good story of the Angel season, Elliot Soto.
Oh.
Can very well be signed with somebody else now.
Yeah.
He can still sign back, but he would sign with the Salt Lake Bees and be there. And then if the Angels wanted to, they could sign him. But at this point, he is a free agent. But at least he got his hit up there, and we got to experience that. And
yeah, that was fun.
The Angels will start off their 2021 season on April 2nd with the White Sox coming to town for a weekend series.
How did Tony La Russa swing that?
Sometimes the most exciting part of a baseball season, especially when your team doesn't make the playoffs or doesn't win the World Series, is the hot stove part of the season. In fact, sometimes that's the best part of the year. And it's all because of speculation. That's what hot stove is, only better. Because this is pure speculation. This is like just going out in your backyard and drilling a hole hoping that oil or something's going to come out. It may not. You never know. And you can come up with, and in the end, it doesn't matter if your speculation was off. You may be disappointed that player that you so badly tied to your team didn't go there. But it's like, okay, oh well, maybe there's somebody else we can get. Last year, everybody going after Garrett Cole. Once he signed, it's like, all right, now who can we go get? We're disappointed, but what can we get instead? So this year, there's a few big names. We talked about Trevor Bauer, JT Realmuto, DJ LeMahieu. George Springer did get a qualifying offer, just like Trevor Bauer, Kevin Gossman, DJ LeMahieu, Realmuto, and Marcus Stroman. They were all offered qualifying offers, which means that if another team signs them, we'll get some sort of compensation for Trevor Bauer signing with somebody else. So a lot of times, is it worth it? Trevor Bauer, yes. DJ LeMahieu, yes. In fact, if those guys, I think all those guys, Marcus Stroman being the iffy one, I think even Kevin Gossman is worth giving up whatever you're going to give for him. So there were a few others did not get qualifying offers that are free to sign anywhere, no compensation. And with the compensation, we look a couple of years ago when a lot of guys set out and weren't signed. Dallas Keuchel didn't get signed until after. If you can hold off and not sign somebody until after the draft, then there's no compensation. But this year, you're going to have to wait till July.
Yeah, it's a long time.
So with not qualifying offers of the big names out there, we know Andrelton Simmons from the Asterix. I don't know why you didn't bring him up as maybe somebody that the Dodgers should look at, but Josh Reddick will be available.
No, he can go to where a nearest trailer park. I don't know. Yeah, he can play in their league.
Didi Gregorius wasn't offered one. Jackie Bradley Jr. from the Red Sox.
That surprised me because I like Jackie Bradley Jr. I could see him. He'd be a really good wherever he would go, but. Yeah, I mean, he could still be a Red Sox, but Red Sox, they've kind of they've imploded.
Right now, I feel bad for Alex Verdugo.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so Bradley Jr. leaves. How long till Xander Bogaerts is out of there? They had a bad season. I'm not holding any team that's in the past been decent. I'm not going to hold this last season against them.
Yeah, it's been, it was a rough season. Usual season. Some of these guys, you look at the qualifying offers, there were 6 players, only that were offered their qualifying offer. But then you have, these other guys that you would think that we mentioned Brad Hand might have been in there. Marcell Ozuna is a free agent. I think he'll re-sign with the Braves, but he's another one of those guys that he fits that role of DH. Not, we've seen him, he can play in the outfield, but he's better at the plate than in the outfield. He makes a really good case for teams to, look at guys like him or Nelson Cruz, who also is a free agent. How about Jed Jerko? Wouldn't you want him on your team, Jerk Store?
Maybe. He's still in his early 30s. I think he's 32. He can be a good utility guy as far as that goes, just an off the bench player. And he's got a great name, G. Yorko, which is pronounced Jerko.
Yeah.
Gotta love that.
Yeah. Mitch Moreland, who came in for San Diego. But you also
traded for him.
Yep, traded for him. And then Colton Wong of the Cardinals would be good second.
With the Dodgers. I mean, with the Angels.
With the Angels, yep. There's just, you look at some of these names, like, yeah, okay. But yeah, I have no interest in Reddick, and I'm sure he has no interest in being back at Dodger Stadium.
No, not at all. So JD Martinez, as we talk about the Red Sox, he is not going to be opting out. And I think that we'll see that too with the player options. A lot of the players are going to take and exercise their option because they don't know what's coming up next year. And this isn't the year to test the market.
Right. Yeah, really, it is not.
And he's been below average for a couple of years now, so I wouldn't either. I would stay where I'm at, JD.
One of the guys, he didn't get signed. He was going to sign with the Braves, but then got COVID. That's Yasiel Puig. I didn't think about Yasiel Puig. He's out there.
Yes, he is still available. No telling if anybody. He's only 30. He didn't play this season, and that's not because he opted out. They opted him out. He probably could have been signed somewhere, COVID or not. It didn't seem to affect him. A lot of these players, if they had it, I think a lot of them were false positives because they didn't seem to ever have anything. And I know they're athletes, blah, 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 blah. But it affects everybody differently. And you'll see that there are people who are probably in better shape than some of these guys are that died from it or were severely affected by it. Right. So I just think that there were some of them, they had minor. We know Freddie Freeman probably had it based on what he said it happened with him. But overall, I think that in some ways that was used as a way to keep people at an arm's distance. Sorry, Puig, we're not going to put up with your mess for the short season. Well,
they were probably afraid that he would he licks the bats, and then that would be a super spreader. And
right. Then the bat boy gets it, and the bat boy touches a ball and gives it to the umpire. Yeah. I know. Did you ever hear Joe Diffie's song, Third Rock from the Sun?
Yes.
Cause and effect. Every little thing becomes, the next thing you know, all of MLB is testing positive. All because Yasiel Puig licked his bat. And the bat got it as well.
Yes.
He couldn't use that bat. So he ended up using another bat, and it became a super spreader event amongst his bats. So a lot of other players that there's some big names that I didn't expect to see here. I thought that in a lot of cases, the teams would hold on to players at least for one more year. There may be a couple of these guys that are out there testing to see. If I'm Trevor Bauer, I don't have an issue testing it out. If I'm DJ LeMahieu, even Real Muto, any of those 6 guys that got qualifying offers, with the exception of Stroman, who opted out once he met his service time, those other guys all had decent enough seasons or have a track record that allows them to test the waters a little more. I didn't think a lot of these guys would go out there. I don't think Mike Zunino was looking to be a free agent. He probably wanted them to sign his offer. He probably liked being there, and they're in a good position to go back again next year. They're $84.7 million below the CBT. They have $84 million to work with to add to their club, and I don't know that they need to add that many people. Maybe some pitching. And next season, they're going to have a full season of Randy Arozarena.
Yeah.
They have options. Oh, another guy who was connected, who was a Ray, that would be maybe a good addition for either of our teams. Aaron Loop from the Rays. He's a free agent, and I think that he's a veteran presence. He would be like Blake Trinan was. He's a guy who's been around, has been solid. I would be fine to see him with the Angels from standpoint of having a solid veteran, not a bunch of guys who are more rookies in the bullpen.
Now, I want to mention something about George Springer. I think you're right. He's obviously doesn't want to be an asterisk anymore. Who can blame him for that? But one of the things that's interesting about George Springer is that he was implicated in the Astros sign stealing scandal. And there was an examination of 58 of the 2017 regular season home games for the Asterix and 131 trash can bangs during Springer plate appearances. He had the second most trash can bangs of the team. His strikeout rate in 2017 dropped to a career best, but he was better this year in 2020. Will that be a factor? I mean, he's apologized. I think he's probably one of the more sincere asterisks on the team.
And he's made it a point to stay out of the limelight.
Yes.
He's been very quiet, unlike his buddy Correa.
Yeah, I would stay away from him. He's bad news.
He's going to be a free agent next year.
Ugh. He can stay as an asterisk forever.
Strike 3, you're out.
Another guy that's name has come up that was kind of surprising to me, Ryan Braun, option declined. He is, for the first time in his career, a free agent.
It's interesting to me. He's 37, and in that wild card game, I think it I don't know if it was the first or second, definitely the second game, he like tweaked his back and then he was out and he didn't play. So will that be a factor for him? He's got to really prove that he's healthy and can stay healthy because he's had back issues. And when you're an outfielder, or really any position, but
yeah, especially the outfield though,
yeah, it's going to be. I saw that, but I immediately thought of his back issues.
Howie Kendrick, his mutual option was declined by the club. So he's a free agent now. Who knows where he'll go? Probably a couple of years ago, I'd have said I'd love to have him back as a second baseman. Can be an Angel or Dodger, but it's just not the same.
Well, and I think he would fulfill more of a DH role than playing a position. He would be there. Yeah, Howie Kendrick's just one of those guys that, you just like him. He's just a really likable guy and would be a good addition to any clubhouse, but where does he fit in? At least not, for the Dodgers and Angels. Yeah, no, he doesn't fit there anymore.
No, not at all. So the team I think we're going to have to watch here in the offseason or during the hot stove is the Mets. Steve Cohen, the new owner.
A lot of money.
Yeah, a lot of money. And the Mets fans were like blown away that he was answering their tweets. And a 17-year-old kid asked him what Met fans should know about him or what he wants Met fans to know. And his response was, I want them to know I'm all in.
Ooh, that gets all of the fans excited.
So now everybody's excited. All of the baseball talking heads are losing their mind. And the question will be if they really are all in. And if you look at some of the moves they've made on their current roster to let people go or that have an open things up as much as they can. Are they a team that will go after? They're already tied to Real Muto. They let Wilson Ramos go, who's a decent catcher. So Real Muto, will they go after Ozuna? Will they go after any of these names to build a team that can compete next year? Will they be? They're putting themselves in position to be that team that I want the Angels to be on the other side, to go out there, fight hard, and make it worth these guys' while. There's a reason why Anthony Rendon came here. There's a reason why Albert Pujols came here.
Yeah.
What is the reason that these other guys didn't? And now will Joe Madden, who's now showing towards the end of the season, what can happen, will that happen? The Mets, too, they're bringing guys in who were great before in their front office, in hopes that they can rebuild and undo all the trouble the Wilpons have caused the Mets fans all these years.
All the heartache and all the Tums that they bought. And
well, Tums, if it works out for that, Tums stock's probably going to go down.
Yeah. Well, and can you trade owners? So Artie Moreno could go to the Mets and Steve Cohen could go to the Angels.
To do that, or some of the others, somewhere that would be all right. If we could just get Artie to get out of the way.
Yeah, he just needs to be the owner and just pay for things and not try to put his 2 cents in.
What do they always say? Let the baseball people do their job.
Yes.
The team like the Angels, I think we're at a point where you're not going to rebuild. So I can look at it and I could be the GM from the standpoint of, I know what pieces we need to plug in. Just tell me how much money I have to spend. But then they're not giving me any money to spend, or the GM doesn't really like that guy, even though he's the best choice for us. I don't really like that guy.
Yeah, I think the Angels, we talked about all the different positions, but GM also fits into that really important position for the Angels because they really need somebody that's going to stand up to Artie Moreno and say, listen, you want a winning team. This is what we have to do to get it. And
that's why, if you notice, none of the GM candidates of the 900 is named Dave Dombrowski, because everybody knew Dave Dombrowski would come in and say, I know what I'm doing. Just get the Manfred out of my way.
Right. Yep.
So one last thing before we wrap up this part and kind of take a look at what we see for the 2021 season. Trade. There still can be some trades. We mentioned Francisco Lindor a little earlier. He's probably one that if they don't think they can re-sign him in Cleveland, will be traded. The question is, will they be able to get as much? Most things I read don't think that he's going to get the return that he could have last season. So there's him. Chris Bryant with the Cubs. Speaking of the Cubs, they renewed, or they picked up Anthony Rizzo's option. So he's going to be a Cub another year. Nolan Arenado, who can opt out, even though he's got a long-term contract, can opt out of it and become a free agent. Would the Rockies look at trading him? And another one is that we mentioned, Carlos Correa is another player who, if he's not going to come back, I don't know, not that he doesn't fit in somewhere else, but I feel like for him, he's made such a big deal of championing the cheating ways of the Asterisks. There's no place else for him to go.
Yeah, I think he needs. I think he would stay where he's at, and that's fine by probably all fans.
I think the biggest thing that any team that has a good shortstop can do is either trade him away or try to get him signed long term. And Dodgers, I'm talking to you. Because Corey Seager in 2022 becomes one of 4 free agents. Francisco Lindor, Trevor Story, Corey, and Correa. And as much as we hate Correa, he is a top-line shortstop when it comes to free agencies. People are going to look at him because he's a productive player, whether we like him or not.
Where does Javi Baez fit on that list? Is he in that group too?
I think he's in about that time frame as well.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. Yeah, definitely. I think that for the Dodgers, they need to sign Corey Seager to a long term. They don't need to let him go. I don't see, Carlos Correa playing for the Dodgers ever. That would be.
I don't. He's where he should go, the Marlins.
Oh yeah, he'd fit in there.
And Miguel Rojas is probably about the end of his time there, or could switch to another. So yeah, that's the place for him. Not here.
Yeah, not here.
We need him someplace where we don't really have to think about him.
Yeah,
Pittsburgh.
Small
but
market.
I wouldn't do that. I like Pittsburgh. I don't want.
Yeah, I do too. I wouldn't do that to the Pirates.
All right. So with the potential of all these moves and a not conceivably a full season, because we have to be optimistic. We know that I hear sometimes we're in the second wave, sometimes we're in the third wave. We don't know what's going to happen with this pandemic. If we go and we look back at the Spanish flu, it took a couple of years before they were fully through it. And we don't know how long it'll take to get a vaccine and even how well the vaccine will work. So what going back to normal as far as our day-to-days and not worrying about who we come in contact with and all that stuff. We don't know if that's 2021. Is it another year of high alert?
I think one of the things that we saw, especially with the in Dallas or in Arlington, was allowing the fans in the stadium, and I think that is, even if we're continuing, where we are in the pandemic, if that means you can have fans, but it's at, half capacity, and I know it also goes to local restrictions and things like that. If you could have fans, maybe not fill the stadium, but like I said, 50% capacity or something like that. Fans wear masks. I think most people are used to that. Most people, I wouldn't have an issue with that. I would love to be able to go up to Coors Field on April 1st and hopefully no snow on April 1st in Denver, because that's happened before, but be able to be in the stadium and be socially distanced, but be there for the game. I think that could be a real possibility because we've seen it done and we are seeing more of the country open up.
Yeah, I think that's definitely good. I think that's the biggest part of what 2021 would make it look different, is having fans. But let's just say that everything goes off as planned, regardless of how many people come in and watch the game. Spring training starts on time, finishes completely. Opening day happens on the 1st. What's the season look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd love to see, I already mentioned, I'd love to see the fans back in the stadium. I wonder too, for those guys that might have struggled, playing baseball in the conditions that we're in, how that will affect them, if they'll be more energized because they went through a full spring training. I think especially for teams like the Angels to have a full spring training with Joe Madden, where you start back where you left off at the end of this season, that could really bode well for teams like that. And but I don't know. I just would really love to have just a regular baseball season, 162 games. But like I said, if it's not a full stadium, but you still have people in the stands, if you wear a mask, you have to wear a mask, whatever those are. I guess those are the kind of things that I probably think about more because that's what we do every day now is, when we go someplace or that type of thing. But as far as, who's going to be where, that's going to be all up in the air because we've got all these free agents. And yeah, it'll be fun to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think that this coming season, it'll be cool to see a whole season. As we wrap up our rookie season here, we went through a little more than what would be half of the season with no baseball. We started on what was opening day last year, and that was all planned out well before anything even got shut down.
Yeah, we knew what we were going to do. We were all in.
We were all in. And even knowing that there was no baseball, we still started on time. We could have pushed it off and started once baseball started. This is our first episode that we haven't had baseball in 2 months.
Yeah.
Whereas before that's all we had was no baseball.
With no baseball and our crazy ideas. And I would like to say, we have always been socially distanced.
Yes. Not even just 6 feet. How many feet is 800 plus miles?
A lot. I don't know.
I think that next season, we'll see more normalcy as far as I think we'll be able to see a whole season.
Yep.
And I think that Trevor Bauer is going to be an Angel. I'm going to go ahead and get my hopes up way too high. And they're also going to sign another big pitcher. We're going to get Wilson Ramos and DJ LeMahieu.
You have gone through your wish list.
And we're going to win the World Series next year.
All right.
So back-to-back World Series titles in Southern California. The Dodgers will not repeat. I repeat, the Dodgers will not repeat. The Angels are going to take it all in 2021 because that's what the offseason is for. Speculation that has no basis in reality. And you can find out what's going on and what we think of it through our social media. You can find us on Twitter at Sibling Rivalry BB without the A, Facebook and Instagram, Sibling Rivalry BB, our website, siblingrivalrybb.com. And maybe during the off season, you'll actually see us do a little blogging, get a little writing in, and some ideas and thoughts about what's going on. But we'll definitely find you on social media. Follow us on all of those. We'll follow you back if you want. And we will see you March 25th to start talking about what could be another historic season in baseball. And that'll do it for this week's and this season's Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast.
Remember, you can find us on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com, and on Facebook and Instagram at Sibling Rivalry BB.
We're also on Twitter at Sibling Rivalry BB without the A. Email us, show@siblingrivalrybb.com. We'd love to hear what you think, so subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to our podcast.
Next time on Sibling Rivalry Baseball, we will be on the verge of a Dodgers title defense, and baseball will be back.
Here in the offseason, the search for Josh Fields will continue on. Of course, we may need to get Dateline involved. Keith Morrison, you're out!